History did not forget this African empire. It erased it. Not because it never existed, but because its existence destroyed the lie the world needed Africa to be. Before borders, before colonization, before Africa was reduced to footnotes and stereotypes, there was power here. Organized power, spiritual power. A system so complete that history itself chose silence. This is the story they never wanted to survive. History did not forget this African empire. It erased it. Not because it never existed, but because its existence destroyed the lie the world needed Africa to be. Before borders, before colonization, before Africa was reduced to footnotes and stereotypes, there was power here, organized power, spiritual power. A system so complete that history itself chose silence. This is the story they never wanted to survive. Long before maps pretended Africa was empty land waiting to be discovered, the continent already knew itself. Rivers were not obstacles, they were highways. Forests were not wild, they were guarded. Land was not owned, it was protected. At the center of this world existed an empire with no official name recorded in modern books. Not because it lacked identity, but because its identity was never meant to be written down. Knowledge was sacred, and sacred things were not given to paper. This empire had laws but no prisons. It had leaders but no tyrants. It had wealth but no hunger. Order was enforced not through fear, but through belonging. From childhood, every person knew their role, their responsibility, their connection to the whole. Disobedience was rare because shame was stronger than punishment. This was governance without violence, and that terrified outsiders. Their settlements were not random. Homes, roads, meeting grounds, all aligned with celestial movements. Solstices, star paths,
lunar cycles. The sky was not decoration. It was instruction. Elders taught that what happens above must be balanced below.
So the empire was built as a mirror of the universe itself. This knowledge did not come from guesswork. It came from centuries of observation passed orally, protected fiercely. Power in this empire was not loud. There were no golden thrones, no crowns dripping with jewels, no public displays of dominance. True authority belonged to councils of elders, priestesses, and masked figures whose identities were known only within sacred circles. The ruler was never the most visible person. Visibility was considered dangerous. Those who desired attention were disqualified from leadership. When foreign explorers finally reached remnants of this civilization, they were confused. They expected chaos. They found infrastructure. They expected primitive life. They found mathematics and architecture. They expected superstition. They found medicine. But instead of acknowledging African genius, they wrote something else. They wrote unknown builders, lost people, prehistoric mystery, anything except African. Because admitting the truth would mean admitting this. Africa did not need saving. Africa did not need instruction. Africa did not need rulers. Africa already had them. And that truth was dangerous. So silence became policy. Deep within the forests, carved stones existed, not words, but symbols. To outsiders, they meant nothing. To initiates, they carried a warning. When strangers begin to record us, we must disappear. This was not fear. It was foresight. This empire did not fall. It prepared, because it knew something history did not want to admit. The greatest power is not domination. It is survival.
The empire was not erased because it was weak. It was erased because it knew too much. Knowledge is harmless until it challenges authority. And this knowledge did exactly that. Healers in this empire performed procedures outsiders would later call impossible. Bone setting. Herbal anesthesia. Surgical techniques learned through generations of experimentation. Illness was treated holistically, body, mind, spirit. This was not magic. It was science without arrogance. They mapped stars using naked eyes and memory. They predicted eclipses. tracked seasons, planned agriculture according to cosmic rhythms. Centuries later, Europe would discover what Africa already practiced. But credit never returned home. More dangerous than medicine, more threatening than astronomy, was governance. This empire proves something colonial systems could not allow to be true: that Africans could rule themselves efficiently. No kings by divine decree. No tyranny justified by bloodline. Leadership was temporary. Power was accountable. That idea alone was revolutionary. When outsiders realized they could not dominate this empire directly, they chose another method. Control the story. Rename the achievements. Scatter the people. Discredit oral history. Erase memory. The elders gathered. They did not argue. They did not panic. They agreed, comma. The empire would end on its own terms. Cities were abandoned intentionally. Knowledge was divided into rituals. Power was hidden in culture. Drums became records. Songs became archives. Traditions became vaults. The empire vanished, but the people survived. Before dispersing, one rule was spoken. When the world is ready to hear us, our stories will return. This was not hope, comma. It was certainty. They did not lose history. They hid it.
History is cracking. Not because institutions changed, but because memory did. If Africa had no history, why was so much effort spent erasing it? If Africa had no systems, why were its structures studied, copied, and renamed? Truth does not need protection. Lies do. This is not about the past. It is about identity. A people who know who they were. Cannot be convinced they are nothing. Across Africa and the diaspora, stories are resurfacing. Oral traditions once mocked are being recorded. Artifacts once ignored are being re-examined. History is being forced to listen. By hearing this story, you become part of its survival. Empires die. Stories don't. History didn't forget Africa. It was afraid of it, and fear always leaves evidence.